Welcome to the Universal Joint Podcast. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and my co-host Dustin Fuhs and I are recording this podcast on Monday, November 11th. That's Veterans Day down here in the States. And as a former soldier myself, I was on active duty with the U.S. Armed Forces from the late winter of 1983 right through spring of 87. And not that anybody cares, but my MOS, my military occupational skill, was 71Q, which is Army Talk for Journalists. So Army training, folks. That's what you're hearing here today. Anyway, Dustin and I would like to thank all of you Universal Joint listeners out there who spent time in uniform. And Dustin, did you do any time in the service or have any family members who were in the service?
I had a lot of friends up here in Canada. It's Remembrance Day, so it's a little bit of a different spin. But we look at it as it's an important time in anybody's life to serve. And thank you for your service down in the States. Obviously, that is a big. I know it was a while ago, but
again, I was that's the thing. I ended up. God help me. It was one of these things where it's like, join the Army to see the world, and I got assigned to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, literally 10 minutes from my parents' house. I could drive home to do laundry. It was, when you think of friends of mine who literally went to the other side of the world and dealt with really severe conditions, I always feel like I got to You got
out lucky and
very.
Well, I had friends who, right after university would go over and, they were in Afghanistan. They were, fighting front lines and did a couple of tours over there. And, I love the idea that that they went out of their way to support the greater good. And a lot of people, when they're just getting out of university or even just getting into university, need that, the cause, go out and, try and figure out who you are as a person. And, I'm a huge fan of that. And, everyone who's out there who has worn a uniform, just props to you. This is your day. And, we thank you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, speaking, though, of November 11th, just as Jess and I were getting ready to record today's show, the Universal Orlando Resort sent out a press release which stated that the second half of their Endless Summer Resort, which is the Dockside Inn and Suites, we have an opening date now. We have, March 17th, 2020?
Yeah, and I want to thank Universal Public Relations for sending out emails right before we record. That always makes our jobs a little bit easier.
Well, the way it typically works is after we record is when they break the news. But
some of the numbers are absolutely astounding when you start thinking about what Universal Endless Summer Resort is going to entail. We're not just talking about a little hotel here, are we?
No. In fact, now remember that the first part of this resort, the Surfside Inn and Suites, opened in June 27th of this year. That had 750 rooms. When Darkside opens in March of next year, the total resort, the entire Endless Summer Resort, is going to have 2,800 rooms. But again, that's an impressive number. But the more impressive number is what they're going to be charging a night for this place, which is starting at $85.
Yeah, $85 a night. That's like, when you're putting things into comparison, that is not even close to what's up the street for staying at Disney's Pop Century Resort.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because that one, it's got 2,880 rooms, so that's pretty much even capacity wise. And what's the rack rate there?
That's $222, and because they've got two levels, so it's $222, $333.
To be fair, though, that if you go to Kayak today and you're looking to grab a room at the Pop Century tomorrow,
$129.
$129 a room. So again, that's always I always enjoy that moment where you're in the hotel room and you walk up to the back of the door and you're looking at the rack rate and it's like, wow, welcome to Fantasyland. Because who's actually paying that price?
Well, and that's always one of the conversations that we've had with regards to Universal versus Disney and staying on property. it really is about access. And I think the fact that with Disney's Pop Century Resort, when you stay on property over at the Walt Disney World Resort, you're getting Fast Pass at a extended period and, the magic bands and everything like that. But at Universal, there's a lot more that goes into staying just around the corner from this. And it's not just for the current situation. It's also what's going on when Universal's Epic Universe comes on board. They're just building up their room repertoire at this point.
Well, we're going to get to that Epic Universe on the second half of today's show. But again, looking ahead to 2020, a week ago today, back on November 4th, Universal is literally, buttoning up, Halloween Horror Night for Orlando when they announce that, hey, next year is our 30th anniversary. And, so what? 5 minutes later, 5 minutes after the last guest gets shooed out the door, here they are announcing, the 39 select nights, where, 30 Years of Fear is going to be presented. So, for those of you marking your calendar, that's September 10th, starts on Thursday, September 10th, and then it's supposed to run through October 31st, Halloween night.
The Saturday.
Yeah.
Which a Saturday night, Halloween night, that's going to be awesome for everyone who's has a family, wants to go out and really enjoy it. Because this year, when it was on, Wednesday, Thursday night, it was a little bit awkward because you actually had two different Halloweens for a lot of families.
It's true. But speaking of which, though, what's interesting is you poke around online, there's a number of folks who were like, wait a minute, that the 29th season of Halloween Horror Night at Orlando, that got 41 nights, and here is the 30th anniversary, obviously a bigger deal, and that's only gets 39 nights. And so it's like, again, remember that we see 2 additional nights tacked on to the schedule for the 29th that were announced over the run of the show.
Yeah, and the other thing that we were looking at was September the 10th for 2020 versus this year, which was September 6th. So it makes you wonder what's going on. Maybe it is just a calendar phenomenon where they had to accommodate something going on between the first week of September and then the 10th.
That's entirely possible. But the interesting thing, though, is that in calling friends at Universal just to sort of suss this out, they pointed me toward the calendar and suggested if you have friends who are, say, traveling down, the second week of October, or the third week, it's quite likely that on Tuesday, October 13th and Tuesday, October 20th.
Yep.
That, depending on how strong the ticket sales are, they may bump the event out on those 2 dates. Likewise, it's kind of a gimme that, what with, as you mentioned, Halloween following on a Saturday, it's not going to take all that much of a push for Universal to run Halloween Horror Nights, the 30 Years of Fear edition anyway, on Sunday, November 1st, as well as the 2nd. So, so just anticipate, folks, that 39 dates have been announced so far, and once tickets goes on sale, that they'll bump out a little bit further from there. By the way, at least according to the press release, the 30th anniversary edition of Universal Orlando's Halloween Horror Nights is going to feature 10 houses. So this year was the first year we got the 10 houses, right?
Yep.
Okay, we got 5 scare zones as well as reimagined haunts inspired by the past. Which
do we have bets on table? I was going through the wiki for Halloween Horror Nights, and some of those properties that they've had in the past, I was just like, oh, bring it back with the technology that we have in today's day and age. Like, we're talking about the first 5-6 years of Halloween Horror Nights. Some of those properties that they had were just like, maybe if they were bring that concept of, the things that they needed to get the original Halloween Horror Nights off the ground. Bring that back. Bring back some of those the classic icons, and just see what happens.
Folks like Jack or the director, that sort of thing. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Oh, by the way, before we close out Halloween Horror for 2019 here, it's worth mentioning that at least as far as the online community is concerned, Yeti Terror of the Yukon was the house of the year this year, and if you, like me, didn't manage to make it down to Central Florida this year to experience that particular haunted house, what's kind of cool is the Universal Orlando Resort just posted a short video on YouTube which shows Santa and his head elf Giggles. Evidently, the story they tell in this video is that Santa and Giggles are leaving the Christmas tree decoration warehouse up at the North Pole, and somehow as they're making their way back to Mrs. Claus and a plate full of warm cookies, they get turned around and stumble into Soundstage 24, which is where they Universal Creative built Yeti Terror of the Yukon. And it's for me, folks, it's worth it alone to watch this video, which features, sort of a first person of Santa and Giggles going through the mazes. All these bloodthirsty Yetis jump out at them. It's worth it alone because Giggles goes through the thing holding a candy cane like it's a cross. Like, that's enough to fend off bloodthirsty Yetis. And let's see, and while we're talking about Christmas colliding with Halloween, kudos to Universal for what they did on Halloween night, on the Halloween night edition of this year's the Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios Florida. As you came out of the park, and face it, after midnight, it's November 1st. And what ended up happening is you came out through the gate, you encountered this group of Christmas carolers who were there like, that's singing up a storm because, again, it's Orlando and the holiday season starts November 1st. And what was great is that Universal could put Christmas carols out there along with people with picket signs to the effect of "It's too soon" and "Stay in your lane." Which
That's
again,
awesome.
I thought that was a fun comic note to end the evening on.
Yep.
But again, of course, as soon as folks walked out the door on November 2nd, which again was the very last night that they presented Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Orlando, the decorating team at that theme park began hauling out the holly. By the way, folks, Dustin and my Holiday at Universal event gets underway this Friday, November 15th. At the Cabana Bay Resort. We're going to start things off with a walkthrough of 4 of the on-site hotels. We're going to check out the Christmas decorations at the Royal Pacific, the Sapphire Falls, Aventura, and of course Cabana Bay. And each of these hotels have their own unique take on the season. Mm-hmm. And I have to tell you, while the hotel packages for the Holidays at Universal Orlando event are all sold out, the folks at Storybook Destinations wanted me to tell you that there is still space, at least when it comes to the walking tours. And on Saturday, Dustin, we're doing...
we're at Universal Studios Florida, and then Sunday we're at Islands of Adventure. Mm-hmm. And then we also have the live recording, right?
Yep,
so the live podcast, which is Sunday evening.
Yep. So, folks, if you're an Orlando area local, or somebody in Central Florida wants to drive on over, and still want to get into the fun, feel free to reach out to Tammy and her team over at Storybook's Destination. Dustin, I feel like we're paying a lot of attention to Orlando, and we haven't talked about Hollywood. Let's pivot there for a little bit. Okay, we've been talking a lot about Halloween Horror Night here, but on the 30th, folks who went to the Universal Studios Hollywood version of that seasonal event got an extra special bonus as they wandered into the Us haunted house, the one that's based on the Jordan Peele film. Mm-hmm. And you and I were debating before we started the show here. Now, Lupita Nyong'o.
So she's incredibly talented actress. Mm-hmm. Kind of one of those when you see her, you're like, oh, she's been in everything.
Yeah, lately. And what was interesting is she drove over for the night. to Universal Studios Hollywood, pulled on the red coverall and grabbed a pair of scissors and reprised her role as Red from Us. And there's a great online video of her freaking out, people who are walking through the attraction. It's like, that's the real actress, and she's going to stab us. Now, on the other hand, if you're an old fart like me, that it was just as cool, if not cooler, back on October 9th. That was when Ivan Reitman, the director of the original Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2, dropped by Universal Studios Hollywood to check out the Ghostbusters house that had been built there in the lower lot. And he brought with him Dan Aykroyd, who not only starred in those two Ghostbusters movies, but also co-wrote the screenplay with the late great Harold Ramis. Mm-hmm. And by the way, it wasn't just the West Coast that got celebrities to come by and check out the mazes. Again, if you head over to YouTube, there's a wonderful video posted there from the Universal Orlando Resort where Jason Reitman, who is the son of Ivan, but more importantly, Jason's the guy who co-wrote and is now directing Ghostbusters 2020, which will be out in theaters July 10th of next year.
Yeah, and they've confirmed that Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, Sigourney Weaver, they're all coming back.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's a video of Jason along with McKenna Grace, who I guess is one of the younger members of the cast of Ghostbusters 2020. But they're touring the Universal Florida version of the Ghostbusters house. So if you want to see that and you want to see the Yeti thing, go check out those.
Absolutely.
All right. Oh, and before I forget, if you are a big Halloween horror fan but didn't get to buy your merch while you were at the event, the Tribute Store, which is located inside of Universal Studios Florida, I want to say it's on the same side of the street as Revenge of the Mummy, the ride in the New York section of the park.
Yeah, it's kitty corner. If you go past Jimmy Fallon, and then you see the Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket when they come through the Ghostbusters facade, right across the street, kitty corner to that is the Tribute Store. And you can't miss it. There's giant signs everywhere that says, last couple days, you must come in. And they're not joking. You have to go in.
Yeah, that's, and again, it closes on November 14th. And as I understand it, the very next day, it then gets swapped out or turned into a store that sort of sells merch that keys off of the Universal's Halloween parade featuring Macy's. What else? Honestly, folks, we should have mentioned this back in September, but the Popeye and Bluto's Bilge Rat barges. They actually closed in early September of this year, and that, as I understand it, Justin, that was a combination of annual maintenance, which you have to do with these water rides, but also it had a lot to do with all of the heavy equipment that was now out on Islands of Adventure Lagoon, helping out with the construction of the Velocicoaster, right?
Exactly. And with Popeyes, it's right across from the other water ride that's right there, the Dudley Do Right. And during October through till probably January, February, not a lot of people like getting soaked. Granted, it's still Florida, so it's still pleasant out, but you still don't want to be getting a shower midway through the day. So it makes sense that they do the annual maintenance. But it was kind of interesting that it's not just that. It's that they're really doing some serious work out in the lagoon.
Well, yeah, and our favorite eye in the sky Bio-Reconstruct, who's been flying over the park and posting all of those images of the barges that are out on the water to help put into things to place. But for me, what was also kind of intriguing was all of the construction fences that are now set up in the Jurassic Park section of Islands. And man, that looks tough to get through these days.
Yeah, it's, you know what, I understand why they need to do this, because it's all about making sure that you get everything done at the exact same time. With any sort of construction, it's a domino effect. You can't do one without starting something, and there's electrical, there's everything that's going through this. But when you actually do a search and bioreconstruct, go back to November 10th, he did a bunch of flyovers of this area, and it just looks awkward. It's almost like when they were redoing California Adventure, and it was basically just one construction fence after another. That's kind of what this feels like. And because they've taken out all of the foliage and all of the trees and all of that jungle that was there that's been growing since Jurassic Park first opened up in Islands of Adventure, it looks as though you're basically just walking on a newly paved road, and it takes you out. But the big thing to keep in mind with this is that Universal's been very good at getting things done incredibly fast and then putting the guests back into the story. So I'm hoping that this is what is happening right now in the back of that park.
Well, what I also hope for here is, given that they've listed that the scheduled day for completion of work on Popeye and Bluto's Bilge-Rat. Why can't I say that name?
Popeye and Bluto's Bilge-Rat Badger. Wow. There we go. It's almost like the what was the original name of the Today Show cafe?
No.
It was the Boulangerie.
I'm just going to sit on my side of the mark and that's right there. Anyway, that's supposed to reopen on December 22nd, and what me personally I'm hoping is that enough of the construction will be done on the Jurassic Park area that we can see a lot of these temporary plywood walls come down, because when all of the crowd show up for the holiday season, that's going to be tough.
I know that we do have that spot though in behind Mythos that still gives us a great view of all the construction. So if you're at the event and as we're walking around, we'll definitely be able to see what's going on with Jurassic Park. You can't avoid it.
Okay, cool. And speaking of construction, I guess we should also mention, pivoting back to the West Coast now, they're hard at work now on the show building, the exterior of the show building for Secret Life of Pets Off the Leash. And a lot of the folks who've seen the work that's been done so far on this faux brownstone up there in the upper lot say that it's going to be a nice companion for the Despicable Me Minion Mayhem attraction right across the street. As far as I know, they are still very much on track for a spring 2020 opening.
Okay.
But again, that's what's the old saying? If you want to make God laugh, make a plan. In fact, you kind of have to feel sorry about those people who went to Universal Studios Florida, early in the morning of October 23rd and thought, ooh, we're right here. We just come in the front door. Why don't we go do Rip Ride Rocket?
There's no line.
There's no line. And then, what was it? It was before 10 that morning that two of the cars got stuck on the track. And at least one of them gets stuck at the top of the the first hill.
Yeah, so the lift hill. The lift hill is one of these things in roller coasters that we would really like to have constantly work. The Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket lift hill is a very unique thing. It's 167 feet tall. When you're going from the moving load, unload, all the way through the section of you picking the song and everything, you're so excited to be able to go up and over the lift hill and get your ride out of the way. But imagine just stopping at the top and all of a sudden you don't move. Well, that's basically what happened. And it isn't the first time. It's not going to be the last time. But wow, the guts that some of these guests must have had.
And just to sort of put the cherry on the sun here, folks, if you're at the top of that lift hill, you are 167 feet up in the air.
Oh, and great views.
Yeah, but also kind of a long stroll down a set of very steep stairs. But and that's what ended up happening. 2 cars got stuck on the track. They had to offload the guests. And here's the statement that the park gave out that day, which is the effect of, Rip Ride Rocket did exactly what it was supposed to. And, the computers brought the ride to a safe and controlled stop. We helped the guests off the ride, and we are working to reopen the ride as soon as possible. Kind of interesting. This has happened before, back in October of 2013. And by the way, I don't know how we missed this, Dustin, but it turns out this Universal Studios Florida attraction celebrated its 10th year of operation back in August of this year. In fact, August 19th. So, God, again, I know I'm apologizing in advance, folks. This is a dad joke, but speaking of rides that perhaps will make people feel ripped off, Dustin, did you hear about this $4 fee that's being added by Uber for people being picked up at the Universal parks?
That was an awesome dad joke, by the way.
I try.
So it looks like Uber, in part of their partnership with Universal Orlando, is creating a pickup fee. It's basically a added surcharge for anyone who goes to Universal Orlando and then specifically wants to be picked up at the Uber and Lyft pickup.
Yeah,
now,
but no, this
I
is
mentioned
Uber,
that is it's only
just to
Uber.
clarify here that's the Uber and Lyft pickup for the parks, not the hotels, right?
Yeah. So, and the other very interesting thing about this, and it's something that we'll go into, but the new fees definitely they're in effect. It is similar to the idea of when you arrive into Orlando International Airport and you want to get an Uber to go to your resort. That fee is already implemented for anyone who is using that service at that location. It's a deal that is signed between the location and Uber itself. So this isn't new, but what was interesting is how they're utilizing the fees. So it looks like what they're doing is not just it's a privilege to be able to pick. No. They're actually using the fees to pay for new signage, extra staff at the drop-off location.
Yeah, and long term, isn't their plan to build, I guess, what they describe as a lounge?
Yeah, which hopefully will have Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting kind of thing that's going in. What I find interesting about it is that this is only for Uber and not for Lyft. So what I'm hearing on the ground are guests who are going over there, and when you travel to Universal Orlando or Walt Disney World, you usually sign up for both Lyft and Uber because Lyft is the official partner for the minivans. So you'll obviously you want to have both options, and let's be honest, most drivers who are in the Universal and Disney area, they're drivers for both companies. So it's a new kind of way of looking at ride sharing down in Universal, but there's so much more that's happening with Uber with the Universal area, but it's not the location. You can actually walk over to the resorts, right? That's one of the tips.
Well, as I understand, it's the other way around.
Yeah, it's only if you're being picked up. So if you're dropping off at Universal, it's not there. It's only for the pickup. Which does actually allow us to have that hidden thing out there, which is if you're getting picked up or dropped off, maybe it is worth going over to one of the resorts, grabbing a meal, and then having your Uber pick you up there.
Yeah, and I guess what's kind of intriguing for me is that, so far we're not seeing this sort of fee at SeaWorld. We're not seeing this sort of fee at Disney. But let's face it, that it's a very competitive environment, in the Central Florida tourism corridor. And if this lounge thing proves to be popular, I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see, Disney doing something similar at its 4 theme parks. I don't know if they could, it would be possible to create this sort of thing for the hotels. But yeah, that I could see this happening.
And the other news that came out was that SeaWorld's not changing anything. So they're basically just saying that there's all about these developments happening, and should it prove successful, there's a very good chance that SeaWorld, as well as everything else, will kind of fall in line, because if with these fees, it's all about what the consumer can expect and what they will not make a fuss over, because we're kind of living in this consumer marketplace where access is all about location.
Well, let's sort of sit back and see if Disney or SeaWorld follow Universal's lead. And speaking of following, folks, when we get back from this commercial break, Dustin and I will be following up on our earlier stories about Epic Universe, the Universal Orlando's 4th theme park.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana lets you buy your next car on your terms. Explore a massive inventory online, filter for what matters, and find your perfect match. Then choose delivery to your home or pick it up at one of Carvana's iconic car vending machines. Every car also comes with a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you can make sure it's the right fit. Buy your car on Carvana. Delivery or pickup fees may apply. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Carvana.
And we're back. Again, we were talking holidays and the holiday thing that Dustin and I are doing this weekend at the Universal. So I thought it might be fun to point out for those of you who are heavily into sugared holiday items, the Voodoo Donuts has introduced as part of their holiday lineup, a 2-part Santa donut, which... as a diabetic, I can sort of look at and wave at. But tell you what, we're supposed to be doing sort of a hail and farewell at the tail end of our Holiday at the Universal event on Monday, November 18th, Dustin. Maybe we can get 1 or 2 of those and share that with the crew before we head off on our last little walking tour of the holiday decorations at the hotel.
Oh, absolutely. And they did come up with a lot of the extra holiday food that's coming to Universal Studios Florida, from hot butter beer, Grinchmas chocolate cupcakes in Zeus Landing. Obviously, as Jim just mentioned, the Voodoo Donut stuffed Santa suit, which is filled with Bavarian and white chocolate, topped with coconut, and another one filled with peppermint chocolate cream. They're also doing there's a full list of everything going over at Universal Orlando, but wow, some of these things are incredible.
And some of them, I think, take a little courage. I don't know if you've seen the Grinch cookie where they've got it that Grinch green.
Yeah.
And... I'm sorry, you just don't, again, kind of a green eggs and ham thing. You just don't leap into a green cookie.
I'm shocked that they haven't started to charge for an Instagram background. Like, instead of spending what's a cookie down there? $4. What if you pay 50 cents just to hold it? Like and the reason why I bring that up, and I know it's absolutely hilarious to think about it, but I was doing some research into some of the baseball stadiums up in the Northeast, and I believe it's in Boston. It's either Boston or the Mets, where they actually take you into the stadium, and you're able to do a 15-minute selfie tour. And it takes you to 4 different locations in the stadium. You get your selfies. You're in and out, 15 minutes, done. And it sells out every single time they do it.
Wow.
So I'm looking for that, especially with green eggs and ham. I don't want to eat it. I just want to take a photo of it.
Okay. Getting back to the Grinch, though, I don't know if you saw November 2nd, the Universal Orlando Resort. They did a video last year of the Grinch working in the official call center and sort of disrupting things there. And they've just posted a sequel to the 2018 offering, and what's kind of interesting is it's very much done in the style of NBC's The Office, and I bring that up because The Office is actually one of the NBC series that are going to be showcased in Peacock, or excuse me, on Peacock, which is the subscription streaming service that Comcast will be launching in April of next year. And Comcast just recently did their quarterly earnings call, and talked up Peacock as part of that. It was kind of interesting that they were, I guess overall, NBC Universal earnings were up. They had some weaker than expected earnings on the film side, and we're kind of quick to point to Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw, which face it, this is a movie that made $750 million worldwide, which sounds like, again, I would be happy to find that piled up on my dresser.
Yeah, I accept that.
But the weird thing of it is that's basically 2/3 of the business that Fate of the Furious did back in 2017. And and before I forget, folks, as I understand it, the trailer for the next Fast and Furious film is supposed to drop in front of Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. So that's not really a surprise, but what was kind of surprising, though, is Brian Roberts, CEO of Comcast, mentioned literally in passing during this earnings call that Epic Universe will be opening in 2023, which is a little later than, I think you and I talked about how I guess the original plan was they wanted to have at least a certain amount of this park open, phase 1 for 2021, which of course is when Disney's doing its big 50th anniversary push. But, in the end it was like, no, let's do this right and let's take the time. So I made some phone calls, checked in with friends, and what it's supposedly the plan is. And, I got to caution you folks that
plans change.
Well, yes, and more to the point, it's Florida. It could rain a lot. But the plan is that Epic Universe would soft open in the spring of 2023, with the idea that the official grand opening would be sometime around Memorial Day of that year. So just sort of tuck that in your back pocket. But what's especially interesting for me is that in addition to talking to the financial community, here's the Universal Orlando also speaking with the folks who were in the immediate neighborhood around Major Boulevard and Sand Lake Road, who are going to be impacted by not only this while this park is being constructed, but when it begins day-to-day operations. So they did a presentation that just recently about the Universal Boulevard land use plan, and talked about what they're planning on doing with the 1,300 acres that are that they own around, again, Sand Lake Road and Universal Boulevard. And what's kind of interesting for me, Dustin, is I guess the park and the hotel and the back of house is going to take up 700 acres, roughly. But what's also kind of intriguing is that they also wanted this, be a good neighbor. So roughly 600 acres of this is being set aside for conservation, for wetlands, as a buffer between the park and the neighborhood. But the other thing is, just trying to sort of come across as, look, we're trying to be a good neighbor. So, for example, we're only going to fire off fireworks this high, so, if you're in the neighborhood, and more to the point, we're only going to use shells that are this big. So we'll only make this much noise and it will only intrude on your neighborhood this much. More importantly, though, they were talking about and supposedly as part of this presentation, they showed all sorts of artwork for how they wanted the sort of do the greenery and the landscaping along iDrive.
Sure.
And in fact, what's kind of interesting to me is I would imagine that the very same people who you were just describing, how they had to tear out all of that stuff for Jurassic Park over at Islands, once they get, that jungle replanted, supposedly some of these guys will then pivot to working on, the planting that they're doing around Epic Universe to, sort of make it pleasing. Now, the downside, of course, is, and I think you came across the stat of how many cars do they anticipate are going to be?
Yeah, so once again, right before we recorded, Alicia over at Orlando Park Stop, which, by the way, Alicia was also the one who pointed out during the Grinch YouTube video that there was a section of the video that actually blurred out a Super Mario logo. I don't know if you saw that. Towards the end, it was one of those things that she was just like, wait a second, something's blurred out for the only time in this entire video. And then she put 2 and 2 together and was like, wait a second, did Universal just kind of put something out there that we shouldn't have seen? I love those little hidden gems.
No. Same thing here.
But Alicia put out a tweet a little while ago about the detailed final plans for Public Road A, which will talk about, as we said, everything that's going on with Universal's Epic Universe, as well as actually giving a view of the surface parking lot of Epic Universe. And the numbers are staggering. Universal is apparently expecting between 28,000 and 34,000 vehicles to drive on this road per day. So if we're looking at half of that, because people have to drive to go and then leave, mixed in with how many thousands of team members, it looks like there's going to be a lot of traffic in that area, which leads to exactly your point, which is how do they become a good neighbor? Well, when you're having that kind of traffic.
And, that what makes this sort of triply difficult is, face it, you've already got the guests who are coming into this approximate area who either headed to Aquatica or get Discovery Cove or SeaWorld. And let's not forget that, several times a week you have, hundreds of thousands of people headed to the Orange County Convention Center for an event. Now, the upside, though, is that in all of these cases, whether it's Epic Universe or the Convention Center or, the 3 SeaWorld-related parks, these folks are, people are headed there, at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, and then they're parked. They're in the convention center, they're in Epic Universe, they're not out clogging the roads. The downside is, of course, that, when all of these things close up for the day, these folks are once again back out on the roadways. And it's certainly going to be interesting to see what the impact is, in that, I know they've been doing all of that, construction on the B line and, to connect with I-4, but it's already tough, whether getting on or off that road at iDrive.
In different times of the day, it's a nightmare. And if people want to be at the park open, if they want to rope drop Epic Universe, that is going to be 9 o'clock, which means everyone's going in at 8. Yep. Which means that's corresponding with rush hour. And then if everyone's leaving, because keep in mind, with a lot of the theme parks, they do have spread out times throughout the day, but very few people have the power and the stamina to go from 8 o'clock in the morning through until 9 o'clock at night. Usually they want to either go back to their resort or they don't want to be around crowds.
And let's not forget that Disney just recently has introduced that new admissions media where, the whole notion is, if you show up at noon, you actually have a lower price point. But I think this is a one park pass or that sort of thing. And you got to wonder, whether the Universals of the SeaWorld of the world will consider the same thing, with the whole notion of, hey, let's suggest this admission media because, again, for those folks, it would be probably a much more pleasant experience to drive over or drive into, those theme parks at that time of day when there's less traffic. Mind you, you're parking in, the outer Mongolia section of the parking lot, but,
Well, yeah, and it was weird that they're only doing a surface, that they're not doing a parking garage. And I've yet to, and it'll probably come out in between, our recording and you hearing this, but where we haven't really seen a lot about the transportation that Universal is planning to take guests between the various theme parks, Volcano Bay, the resorts, and as their campuses grow, there's going to be that conversation of, okay, how many people are actually going to be driving? And yeah, 26 to 34,000 cars a day, that's huge. But how many are going to be finding just a simple parking spot and then taking internal transportation from there?
Interesting point.
These are all things that over the next 3 years are going to be very interesting to see how they start taking, this added transportation method into use, because it's all about guest satisfaction. And I'm pretty sure that people, they like driving, but Disney's produced a lot of extra revenue by allowing or by charging guests that extra $20, $30 a day to just park your car.
Well, speaking of Disney, what I find kind of intriguing about this whole, for example, the landscaping aspect of the, what they're doing around Epic Universe is that if you pivot to, when Disney announced the Disney Decade and back in January of 1990, and, all of the plans that the company was then making for the $3 billion Westcott project, one of the things that they literally held a gun to Anaheim and Garden Grove to the effect of, look, we're going to be investing $3 billion in this brand new park, but we want the land that's outside of the park to be as beautiful as it is inside. And they created the Garden District, that they went through and created uniform language for, how big the signs could be around the park and, the how big the walkways were. And, and in fact, as you drive, I want to say on a harbor headed down to Garden Grove and see, the uniformity, how far you go down that road, with uniform signs and uniform plantings and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's going to be intriguing. And I guess, of course, the irony is that, here's Anaheim and Garden Grove spent all this money to make these physical changes. And then, of course, Disney never builds Westcott. They built Disney's California Adventure for roughly a third of what they were originally going to build Westcott for. And
oh, come on. They evened that out in the redo of that.
Yeah,
that
but
theme park.
that and I know we're also getting Marvel superhero land being built right now.
Yeah.
The hard reality is that, yes, they probably spent the $3 billion over, the park opened in February of 2001. So here we are 18 years later. And yeah, that they probably paid the equivalent. But, you got to look at it from Anaheim side of the fence, where especially in like 98, 1999, it's, wait a minute, we paid all of this dough.
Yeah, I thought that we were going to get something like this, and instead you decided to go over to another spot. Come on, it's a bait and switch, and then, oops.
Okay, pivoting back now to Epic Universe. It's worth noting, again, we have all this information now about roads around the park and, how much land is being set aside for conservation and that sort of thing, and yet no real knowledge on, yes, we have that piece of concept art. We don't have any definitive word yet on lands inside of the theme park. And what's kind of intriguing to me is that, one of the pieces of language that's been very consistent throughout. In fact, I think, again, it's Alicia who came up with that informational brochure for some sort of a clandestine meeting that the Universal Orlando Resort had with its partners, and that included the language in there about the classic Universal Monsters Land.
Yep.
But here's the thing, Dustin. February of next year, in fact, February 28, 2020, we have Universal releasing a brand new Invisible Man movie. This is being done through Blumhouse. It's going to star Elizabeth Moss as, it's a female-driven narrative of a woman who's been abused by her husband. And again, I'm not going to give anything away, folks, but there's a wonderful trailer. Go check it out. But here's the thing. It's, this is not the version of the Invisible Man that Universal did back in the mid-1930s. And in fact, I want to say it's James Whale, the same guy who directed Frankenstein and the Bride of Frankenstein. But no, this is a contemporary retelling of the Invisible Man story. And I guess that's the thing with theme parks, is that you're constantly doing battle with, do we go with classic IP? Do you do like Disney does and every so often circle back on something like Lady and the Tramp, or or hell, we just in the past couple of weeks we've been hearing about the Robert Zemeckis possibly directing a new live action version of Pinocchio with Tom Hanks as Geppetto. Or do you go contemporary? Do you do what, for example, what Universal did with, Terminator 2 3D? And, that's, we've got the signage outside of that building right now for the Bourne, Stuntacular.
Well, they were actually just in the press release that they put out with regards to the Universal Endless Summer Resort. They talked about how there's a lot of stuff coming to that area, including Despicable Me, Man and Mayhem, Jurassic Park River Adventure, Transformers, and the Bourne Stuntacular, which is debuting in spring of 2020. They're consistently talking about how every year there has to be something bigger and better.
Yeah, but
in between now and 2023, where do you put your chips?
Well,
do you bet on red? Do you bet on black? Do you bet on across the board? What do you do?
Yeah, and more to the point, do you take advantage of what's going on, out in the world today? I mean,
Sure.
Face it, right now, the news media is full of stories related to Popeye's chicken sandwich and, the ridiculously long lines.
The chicken wars.
Yeah, and people getting stabbed or hit with cars because, sort of, I need that sandwich. And, so what does Universal do in this window of time where suddenly people seem obsessed with chicken sandwiches? Well, hey, the Today Show Cafe, the thing that just opened at Universal Studios Florida earlier this year, they're introducing evidently this is a recipe that Al Roker's mother-in-law came up with. It's a Southern chicken biscuit slider.
And they look amazing.
Yeah.
They're, what do we got here? Grilled chicken, pimento cheese, crispy onions, Carolina Gold barbecue sauce, and shredded lettuce on a warm, freshly baked biscuit. Would you like me to go slower?
No, I just, I'm thinking that perhaps as part of, our walk through the park on Saturday, maybe we could swing by and get one of these things. Unless, of course,
it's going to happen.
The riot has broken out by then, and then we'll go just walk around that.
No, all we have to do is, hey, look, clever distraction. And then people look over there, and then we go and get the Al's Southern chicken biscuit sliders.
Now, speaking of the trip of this week, I really got to go pack. So, all right, tell you folks, until that time, Dustin, where can they find you elsewhere online?
Yeah, so I'm over at stepstomagic.com, Universal Disney trip planning, top 10 lists, random stuff. I'm also over at Instagram, so at Steps to Magic and at Dustin Fuhs. Those are the two places that I'll be posting a bunch of stuff, especially when we're down on this trip. There's going to be a lot of photos and a lot of news coming out, so I'll be sure to post a lot over there. And I'm also over at the We Like Theme Parks podcast. So it's a podcast all about guys who like theme parks. Okay. So good times.
And speaking of guys who like theme parks, Tessa and I do the Disney Dish, which is the podcast where we talk about the Disney parks. Let's see. I also do with Drew Taylor, we do Fine Tuning, where we talk about all the news that's going on in the world of animation. Aaron Adams, the gentleman who edits a lot of the podcasts here at Jim Hill Media, he and I do the Marvelous Disney podcast. Dan Z and I do the Looking at Lucasfilm podcast, and nothing going on that side of the street lately. And let's see, and then Michelle Valladolid and I do the I Want That podcast, and Michelle's just back from Orlando and spent way too much time wandering around Disney Springs and the parks, checking out all the latest merch, and we'll be talking about that one soon. Tell you what, folks, if you could do us a favor, Dustin and I, if you could head over to iTunes and rate and recommend our shows, that would be incredibly helpful. Likewise, if you really, really, really like what you've heard here today, if you could head over to Bandcamp and subscribe, that would be incredibly helpful. And that's the phone ringing in the background, so I got to go get that. So, okay, folks, thanks for listening. And Dustin and I will be back soon, or hell, we'll be in Orlando this weekend. So look for us there.
Yeah, live podcast this weekend. So, or not live podcast. It's podcast that we are recording live that you guys will hear soon enough.
There you go. Until then, take care, folks, and we'll be back soon.